Well, the first thing that I tell people in relation to this book is the most important thing for you to know is that you are worthy, period. A lot of people come up to me and say that they want to write a book, and I remind them, you are the book. You
Mm.
literally are the most important book that could be read.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage. So, what if I told you that the secret to wellness isn't green smoothies, perfect morning routines, or having your life completely together? What if the real breakthrough happens when you stop pretending you're not falling apart inside and start building life that actually works with the reality, not against it? On today's episode, we're going to be talking to a visionary who didn't just write a book, but rewrote the rules. Dr. Portia Preston, who's done something remarkable. She created a wellness approach that throws perfectionism out the window and invites you to show up exactly as you are. So without further ado, Dr. Portia Preston, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation. Of course, I think this is something that everybody needs to hear about these days. I mean, we always are working so hard. It's modern life, right? Like if you're not doing enough, you're not doing it right. So people need to hear about this. So before we talk about the book, though, I think it's important we learn a little bit more about you. I mean, you went to Stanford and studied cultural and social anthropology. So I'm curious to know, like, how that all, led to the writing of your book and your philosophies.
Sure. So I was very interested in how culture and society shaped health behavior. I was beginning to get the idea that it wasn't just the person having a certain health behavior that led to an outcome, but maybe something about their environment. So that's really what I looked at in cultural and social anthropology. And I would say that when I did my honors thesis, I was talking through the stories of, I would say, maybe 5 or 6 Black women who all had this condition and how they found agency in their lives.
Mm.
And I probably have the distinct, honor of having made people cry at my defense. And so they kind of looked at me and said, "You should go into an applied field." They really didn't know what to do with me. And so I went into public health. And over the years, I've always just passionate about helping people. But I would say that it was when I was finishing my doctorate, I actually got really sick myself. I got kidney disease and I ended up having a blood clot a few months later. And that's when I sort of came back around to those same thoughts, but the idea this time was, what does wellness look like for someone who doesn't fit the characteristic mold? How do I recreate this for myself?
Understood. So I'm really sorry to hear that. That must have been just a lot to go through. But it sounds like now you kind of overcame that, and here you are now showing what you learned throughout that process. And it's good that you kind of had that background, and you were able to create these approaches to help all these other people. And also before you started writing this book, I know you just did so much more. So I think it's important that we touch upon all this stuff. I mean, going from being a professor at Cal State to doing TED Talks to working with Deloitte, and I mean it's incredible. So I'm sure that all of this kind of influenced your approach. Is that correct?
Yes, because I was living through this, and even now I still am. Honestly, it hasn't gone away. I just got a new health condition 3 weeks ago. And I know it's okay. It's okay. But I just am continuing have to figure out, like, how do I live my life? And I'm realizing that I write the rules. If I want to overwhelm myself and be extremely busy, then I can do that. If I want to be up to my eyeballs and work, I can do that. But I also control the pace, especially in my position now having tenure. Um, I need to be smart and I need to think about like quality over quantity, what really matters, right?
Right.
And I'm just realizing, like, if I'm everything to everyone, I'm nothing to myself. So yes, it was scary to be in those roles and going through those health challenges, especially at the beginning because I wanted to prove myself.
Right.
And again, I learned the same hard lesson. You're not going to have anything to prove if you're not here. And I think it took me a while to really accept that because I definitely was one of those people that just felt like, oh, no, stress doesn't affect your health. And, just keep
Mm.
going and it's going to be fine. And I really had to go through all of the waves of disability leave to be willing to look at it a different way. And I think what I was afraid of is that it was going to wipe out my identity. I had so much of my identity wrapped up in achievement. And I felt like if I really pause to take care of myself, then all of that was gonna fade away.
Well, clearly it didn't, right? You're able to find a way to, come over that because it's important that you think about, like, I guess, as you say yourself, presence over perfection, right? I mean, that's your core message.
Mm,
So maybe that leads us directly into the content of the book itself. I mean, you open it by saying, I am one of them. People that have a love-hate relationship with self-help books. So, what does your book do differently than the traditional wellness
mm.
industry?
Well, I would say what I tried to be very careful about was not laying out a plan that if you followed it was suddenly gonna make you infallible and everything was going to be fine, because it's been my experience so many times that my expectations fall short of my reality when it comes to applying principles from a book. And so I wanted to make sure my reader knew that no matter how they responded to the book was gonna meet them right where they were. That it was okay to go through a challenge and you could pick the book up and it was gonna tell you, "Okay, let's live from there." So I really wanted to make sure that it would honor the reader's reality and work with them rather than the reader trying to pull themselves out of their reality and mold themselves to an unrealistic scenario.
I think that, from the author's perspective, that's something a lot of people can learn from. A lot of people, a lot of books these days, they think, okay, this book's going to do this for you. Expect to accomplish this by the end of these 40,000 words of writing, but
Yeah.
you're right. The best books are the ones that meet you where you are. So as you, plan this book, what did you do specifically to ensure that that was the case?
Well, I thought about what it would really mean to write the book that I needed. I was going through a lot when I was writing this book. I was going through a depression. I was realizing that I really needed to have boundaries, and that's something I wasn't comfortable with. And I struggled a little bit, with hope and uncertainty. And I think we all can relate to that right now. And so I feel like I had to write something that I could read on my bleakest day and feel like it would take me on a realistic journey that would provide a meaningful transformation no matter what was going on in my life. And I think that was a much slower writing process because it meant that I was constantly trying to break the book. If it
Understood.
didn't work for a certain scenario, then I didn't want to lie to people. I wanted to have integrity about what I wrote. So I think I did a lot of testing of the principles throughout the writing process.
Okay, so that's actually kind of cool to think about that you were actually like implementing it as you were
Oh,
writing,
yeah,
which
for sure.
yeah, it not only brings it to like the forefront of your mind, but I think it also um like if your mindset is in that specific practice and you're writing it at the same time, I feel like it only strengthens the work too.
Yeah.
Do you have an example of one of them that you like specifically, you know, remember over others perhaps?
Sure. So the same cycle, which I talk about in chapter 8, is a sanity saver. And it's 4 simple steps, which means it took me probably months to create, a year probably, because I kept coming up with all these complicated ideas. And I'm like, oh, it's on the right track, but that's not quite it. And what I came up with in the end was S stood for slow down and reflect. The A was acknowledge your reality. The N stood for navigate with intention, and then the E stood for evaluate and adapt. And I can tell you honestly, that took up less than half a page, but originally it came from chapters and chapters of writing. So it just took time to really drill down to what are the essentials that people need to know so that they can pull this out at any moment in their lives and use it.
Understood. Well, I love that framework, and you kinda just came up with that yourself then, right? The
Yeah.
acronym, everything.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
mine.
awesome, and was it kind of, like, based on, I guess, your own experiences or, like,
Yeah.
research, case
Mhm.
study, like that as well?
Yes, I teach stress management. I've been teaching stress management in a college setting for about 6 years now, and one of the biggest things is learning how to be intentional in your response rather than just reacting to a situation.
Mhm.
I also noticed that it's my tendency to wanna hustle through things, So slowing down is something I have to actually think about doing. The acknowledge your reality was really about figuring out where am I just pulling out the worst case scenario and insisting that that's what's going to happen. What is actually true? What am I really dealing with here? You know?
Right.
Navigate with intention was, really calling back to the strength and just doing small things to build momentum. So that was something that was important for me because I constantly felt stuck. And whenever I felt stuck and like I couldn't get anything done, nothing would change until I was willing to start small. So that was important for me to convey. And then the evaluate and adapt just acknowledges that for all of us, change is inevitable. And if you are changing, shouldn't you be able to come back to this book and change your approach?
Right. Yeah,
So,
I guess that yeah, exactly.
yeah.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess that kind of ties back to what you said in the beginning about how, the book meets you where you are, gives you what you might need, that sort of thing. So I like how it all aligns at the end.
Thank you.
But that's just one of the amazing frameworks in your book. So if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about it and get in the know, well, I guess all you have to do is pick up Hustle Forward, Let It Go and find which one of those frameworks works best for you. So that being said, I'm curious to know a little bit about the writing process. I mean,
Mhm.
first off, it was actually kind of cool that you planned it to launch during National Wellness Month. I think that's something that a lot of authors don't always consider about the date that their book is actually published. So how did you think of that approach?
I am not even gonna lie, it was completely serendipitous.
Oh wow. Okay. But hey, it worked out then, right?
It worked out.
Would you
But
say that
thank you for
it
acknowledging
benefited
that.
you then? Like it just happened to.
Yeah, it just happened because the date was really picked by the publisher.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
maybe just have a publisher with some strong intuitions.
I think that might be the case.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, aside from that, then, I mean, obviously, a lot of your book has to do with personal experiences. It's very vulnerable and raw. So, what's your strategy for putting those personal stories into the book? I'm sure it was a little bit
Mhm.
painful to rehash things that happened and what you went through. So, tell us a little about.
I'm really happy that you asked that. That's something I would love to talk about. I always try to tell audiences when I speak that I share my story so that other people don't have to. If you're in a work setting and you want to talk about these issues, you're able to talk about a story that I told without having to divulge your own, because I know that not every setting is safe. And I really made sure that I gave myself consent. Someone talked to me once about speaking from the scar, not the wound. So, have you healed from this enough to be able to talk about it without triggering yourself? The other thing is, you'll notice that I never really get into specific situations unless it only had to deal with me. And that's because I feel like when it comes to other people, those are their stories to tell. So that was the hardest part for me, honestly, and I knew I wasn't ready to tell a story until I could tell it in that way. So if I couldn't just focus on, like, what are the principles, I knew it wasn't ready to be told.
Understood, right. So I get that. I kinda like how you did that, like, little check, right, to see, like,
Oh,
is
yeah.
it time yet, is it not?
Yeah.
That's a good tip that a lot of people can use. People write about vulnerable topics all the time in memoirs and self-help books,
Mhm.
but I like that's a new one that I haven't heard yet. So yeah, really powerful stuff. Um, so kind of branching out from that then, I mean, I mentioned before all of your different roles, right? Professor, consultant, speaker. How did you carve out the time to write all of this?
It took a long time. I know that's not what people wanna hear. But for me, during this process, I found out that I was both autistic and ADHD, and it started
Mhm.
to make sense because I had all these really great ideas, but they were kinda coming out in the, like, a stream of consciousness side, style, kind of like William Faulkner, and, I couldn't pass it off to the reader like that, but I also couldn't make sense of it for myself. So it took a really long time and working with a lot of different people to finally get to somebody who could really understand how my brain worked. The other thing is I have a hard time processing. When I speak out loud, it's very easy for me, but when I write, one part of the brain has to talk to the other, and that is difficult for me. So that disability means that a lot of the times I will question what I write and I will constantly eliminate it. So that made the process so much longer than it had to be. And it probably wasn't until the editing process that I finally became more comfortable with my writing. And I still have to be very careful about that because I tell people it's not so much about perfectionism. It feels like there's like this one way or this one feeling I'm trying to convey to people, and I want it to be that exact feeling. And if I can't do it in the right way, then I don't want to say anything at all. So all of those things made it very difficult. And then, like you said, all the roles that I had. So I was earning tenure during this time. There were definitely times where I had to put my research and my students first. So I really did finish it when I was on sabbatical. I had time to sit down with a coach and, really get into things. But I think what helped me the most was having people that could help me kind of tie down my story, help me kind of create, a
Mm.
sequential
So you need a
outline.
team. Yeah.
Yeah, and just kind of verify, yep, nope, that's a really good story. That's clear. Go ahead and tell that. So, um, I think that's something I would always want in the future is having someone to kind of like, a sounding board. I've always needed a sounding board to go over ideas with. And I'm not ashamed to say that because I think that we all have the right to be unique. And I actually bought a book on writers that talks about all of the different habits people have had over the years. And it gave me freedom and permission to kind of find my own.
I like that. Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, people think that writing is something you have to do by yourself. They try to
Yeah.
keep everything on their own, and you even keep it a secret sometimes. But it only gets better when you talk about it, right? You're just improving
Yeah.
it by
Yeah.
doing that, running ideas past people. Figuring out what works, what doesn't. Did anything surprise you along that process? Like maybe you had a certain idea that somebody else said, like, no,
I
like,
would say anytime I pressured myself to do this and I really wasn't ready to, it just absolutely didn't work. So I think that, realizing there was a lot of time wasted being hard on myself when I
right.
probably just was overwhelmed. And when I was actually ready, I could be in a body doubling space and just really get things done. So I think it was a matter for me of finding like the right help at the right time. So I think that really surprised me. It's like you can give yourself all the time and space, but if you're not ready to do this, it's not happening. And I had to learn how to honor that and to kind of like see, for other reasons, maybe because of the autism, being in burnout related to that, you're not going to be able to push this. And sometimes I felt like I really had to live things before I could write them. And that took time.
Understood. I get that. I mean, um, it's a lot to think about, but it's important to do so because, again, if the book's going to go to an audience, right? So you have to know what other people might be perceiving it as, and, that's only going to make it better.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. I'm glad you said that because you actually triggered a thought for me.
Okay.
I definitely had a lot of friends that I would talk to about the ideas. Um, Certain people would be relevant for certain chapters, and that really helped to make sure that I was hitting the right notes and I was going to help people. So I really liked that. And I would be selective. I didn't, share it with everyone, but I might talk to someone and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about talking through this idea. You know, does that work for you?" And my friends have been used to me beta testing advice on them for years, so it wasn't a problem for them. And it really helped when I was dealing with some parts that were really emotionally heavy, just to have my friends kind of holding that space with me.
Right.
But
Well,
I
that's
felt like it's for the community, so why not have them be involved, you know?
why not, right? And I'm sure it helps you, but also helps them, and
Mhm,
just that
mhm.
all around improvement for everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that being said, you have this book out, you're doing a ton, but have you considered any other projects, any other books they might?
Yeah, yeah, there actually is another project, and it came
Mhm.
to mind probably right around the time of the launch, and I had to make the decision to kind of let it just germinate in the back of my head. But, yeah, I do have an idea for something else I would like to write. Yeah. Mhm.
Is it a secret? Is it under wraps right now? Should we be on?
Well, I don't mind talking about it a little bit because I think part of it's already in the first book. The chapter, hmm 4, I believe, talks about living with intention, and this is really an expansion on that because I just see so many of us getting caught up in maybe our feelings or certain struggles, and it's almost like we're not really awake to our lives, and so without giving too much away, I really want to develop something that will help people see more clearly. This is the life that you have at this moment. And perhaps there are things that you don't want to think about because it will make you face your mortality. But maybe those are the exercises that we need to be able to really make the most today. So that really is the gist of it. Yeah.
Okay, well, very exciting stuff. If Thanks for giving us like a little bit overview. It seemed like maybe one of the first times you mentioned that to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely the first time I've said anything out loud.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's, kind of, within the whole realm of being, wellness, self-assurance. You might be wondering, like, is this a good idea or not? Should I share it with people before I even get started? Or how long am I? Whatever.
Well, to be honest with you, the only concern I have is that I was way too gung ho at first, and I literally wanted to be working on the draft right away, and I had to pull myself back. So that's really where the apprehension is.
Understood.
Yeah. So as long as I know, okay, your hands are full right now.
Yeah, well, hey, that's what it's all about. You got to find the right time for it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
But when the time does come around, I'm sure that you're going to be posting about it online. People can kind of stay up
Yeah.
to date. So, where's the best
Yeah.
place for people to get in touch and also to get in touch about your current book?
Absolutely. So my website is portiapreston.com. That's PortiaPreston.com. And then all of my social media is Dr. Portia Preston. So DrPortiaPreston.
Under-
And my book is available everywhere that books are sold.
Understood. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. We're going to put the links in the description box of this podcast today, everybody. So you can click over and get in contact, get connected, and everything in between. But as we begin to wrap up today, I'm wondering if you have any other tips, tricks, writing
Sure.
strategies that you might want to offer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, the first thing that I tell people in relation to this book is the most important thing for you to know is that you are worthy, period. A lot of people come up to me and say that they want to write a book, and remind them you are the book. You
Mm,
literally are the most important book that could be read, and to not make a book, more important than what it is. I used to go into a bookstore and torture myself and go, "Oh, no, all these people finish it, how come I can't?" And then I remembered, wait, a lot of people are not writing these books, so I learned to not be as hard on myself. Um, I want to encourage people to embrace writing in a way that appeals to them. I really wanted mine to be like a creative, choose your own adventure type deal. And even though it took me time to figure that out, I'm really happy that I stuck with that because in the end, it got there.
understood. Yeah. I mean, I get what you mean exactly. People probably feel this all the time. So I appreciate you kind of giving us that step. And I think you're a perfect example for what happens when you actually make it happen. I mean, it's you said it's going to be a long time in the writing process for this first book that you did. I think anybody else can kind of use that as an example too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
However you do it, however your process is, that is what's for you. And don't let anybody else talk you down. If you write best at Chuck E. Cheese, then, go ahead and collect those tokens and get it going.
Well, that's a new one for sure. A little loud in my opinion, but yeah, whatever works for you, whatever is best for you. So yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on. I really appreciate you, joining us today and chatting a little bit about your journey and everything in between.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, and guys, again, check out Hustle Flow or Let It Go wherever books are sold. And just remember, sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply honoring where you are right now. But if you do have a story to tell, get it out there, right? Start writing, start leading, and start creating. We'll see you next time on Authors on Mission podcast. That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or a leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.